I absolutely adore how Sylphy is as down horrendous as Rudy himself. There's a moment in this latest episode where basically the princess is just trying to see where her mind's at. She's saying no more BS, we need to get these two together. And the idea that Sylphy just so casually admits to just how down bad she is for Rudy and the twisted thoughts in her mind, it's not a matter of if she wants to sleep with him or not, it's a matter of how many babies he wants to put in her. And I think everyone was just like, God damn, I mean, this girl, she bold. But honestly, I think this is one of the best episodes of the show as a whole because the reunion we've all been waiting for was more beautiful and tender than I thought they were initially building into. But by recreating their first scene together, I mean, it's hard not to be touched. And this was a fantastic episode. But I do have a full live reaction to today's wonderful Mushoku Tensei episode over on my Patreon. So if you would like to see that, it's over there if you're interested. Like I said, one of the best, if not the best for me personally. I know there's been some criticism with like, oh, how did Rudy not tell that it's Sylphy? Or the fact that, oh, Sylphy should have just, womaned up and just told Rudy. But like, there's a lot of feelings. And I think one of the biggest takeaways is that they were 5 or 6 when, Rudy was really around her. And there's been a lot that Rudy's been through. In terms of what's currently on Rudy's mind, why is his body broken and not able to be used anymore? And 2, why did the girl that he fell in love with abandon him? And add in a third, he almost died after thinking he was really good at navigating this world. He's not really thinking too much about, when he was 5 or 6 years old with Sylphy in the village, right? Like it's been a long time for him. And the idea that he does end up recognizing her without her needing to say anything. Yes, it helps because they recreate their scene about how, like, not only does Rudy stand up for her, but then they obviously take a bath together. So the idea that once he removes the glasses, it all just starts coming back, because as he's doing it, I recognize those ears. I've seen blushing ears like that before. Nothing about her body's, like, physically, like, it's not like she had, like, a nasty gash that would immediately recognize, but it's pretty sweet because eyes are considered the window to the soul, right? So the idea that once he sees that, he asks her, is your name Sylphy? And the fact that she is just, because for her, there was no signs that Rudy recognized her. There was no conversations like, oh, you remind me of someone I knew when I was a kid, right? No, like, for her, that is just such a tender moment of like, I love you and I want to be with you. And for Sylphy, there's obviously that confidence issue. I mean, she's been through a lot. Hell, we saw her. She got thrown into the air and then she had to start a brand new life faking to being a completely different person. And when you see the boy that you care for so much and you feel like he doesn't remember you, she has self-confidence issues. I mean, it's always easy for a viewer to say we would do things differently because we have a clear headspace, we're not put in their shoes, but it's hard to say because this is a complex situation for both of them. But I think that slow burn buildup really makes this payoff feel beautiful, because had we just jumped into Sylphy, taken off her glasses, said, hey, Rudy, remember me? I mean, it would have just felt like, oh, this is going to be the rebound relationship for Rudy. But Rudy's had to really think about things. He's been at his absolute lowest. He's wanted to kill himself, and he's attempted to do so. He's built connections that he thought would last a lifetime to only implode in his face. And then relationships where, people are beating his ass end up becoming best bro like Soldat, right? So the idea that he's gone through a lot of things since the breakup with Eris, right? And yes, we all know it. Eris was just bad at communicating. It actually didn't need to be this way, but he was forced to tackle it, and in doing so, he's forced to actually improve on himself. And I think that's what makes this moment so beautiful, because it feels like Rudy has grown from the end of season 1, right? He's really gone through a lot of things, and the idea that he just magically didn't flip a switch and fixed his body, because at the end of the day, this is what I was saying pretty much from the beginning of this season, that he needed to, 1, emotionally fix himself. So that means, understand that sometimes heartbreak does happen and maybe he needs to move on. But on the other side, there's that physical attraction to things, but you also need to have that emotional bond too. If the whole reason he can't get it up is because he feels emotionally scarred. And it will be very interesting to see if this will be the final hurdle, because he obviously was physically attracted to Sylphy, but now that there is that emotional bond, the first person who was really there for him in his childhood, I mean, he has a lot of loves in his life. He's got his tutor, he's got Eris, he's got Sylphy, like there's a lot to him. But at the end of the day, this felt like a very intimate moment, and I loved how they built up into it, because we knew they were going to try to like recreate it. I just thought what was going to happen is like someone would jump him in the woods and then he would protect and then they'd get rained on or something. But it was kind of clever. She took the staff away so he wouldn't have it, and then she used the staff, activated the ring, Storm comes in, using what Rudy taught her. And for Rudy, I mean, he's having trouble getting it up in the morning. I mean, so for him to be like, I must be having an off day, that's basically his Monday in a nutshell anyway, so he doesn't really think much of it. All he assumes is someone did that, and Sylphy was kind of like understanding, which is why she was so nervous. And honestly, I thought they were gonna be a lot more intimate, a lot more like intense and physical, but the idea of just him like reflecting like, hey, I understand about elves and they don't want to show their skin, I'll turn around, he's trying to be considerate, and just the way they build into that, it surprisingly was quite sensual without going really fan servicey or anything like that. I think that's kind of like the brilliant thing about this core of Mushoku Tensei is that ultimately, yes, it is a school arc, right? It's this kind of like, okay, Rudy hit his absolute lowest, and yeah, he may not be jumping into the next big explosive thing, but Rudy had to improve on his character. And I honestly appreciate an author, and I appreciate an anime studio that doesn't just rush past these types of moments, because for him, in order for a character like Rudy to improve and grow, whether emotionally, physically, power-wise, skill-wise, at the end of the day, sometimes it might take a year or two for him to slow down, recollect himself, because Rudy really didn't have experience with the relationships prior to this world, right? And he was kind of on an autopilot high of thinking he knew what he was doing. The wake-up call with the near-death experience, the breakup, not understanding why the girl he slept with then just upped and abandoned him, and obviously just, the idea of like his entire world just kind of went away, and now he's just like, yeah, I'll go look for so-and-so, but at the same time, like, who's with me at this point? You need to let a character like that have self-doubt, sit in a corner sometimes, and hell, even attempt those darker thoughts. But I love how far Rudy has actually grown over the course of this season, and the complexity of the character writing is the thing that makes this show so good, is that you honestly feel like you get inside these characters' heads, and the best thing that this episode did was let us, for a majority of it, get inside Sylphy's head, because something I mentioned, I loved episode 0, focusing just on her, what happened with her prior to the season kicking off, but I like how they've given more characters these times to shine where, yes, Rudy can be in the scene, but it feels like it's being directed from, as an example, Sylphy's perspective, which lets them feel a lot more fleshed out and feel more similar to reading a light novel than you're typically used to when watching an anime, because usually you don't get those internal thoughts. You don't get to see what the characters are thinking all too much because Rudy is the one we really focus on, but this season has done a hell of a good job making it feel a lot more like reading a book rather than simply just watching an anime. I could probably gush about this episode for damn near 30 minutes straight, but I'd just be a broken record, to be honest. I love this episode. I have no idea what people are feeling about it because it's still early as I'm recording this, but at the end of the day, I know how I feel. I think this is beautiful, tender, it finally happened, the moment we've been waiting for, and I personally love the slow burn to get to this moment, and I'm glad they didn't just rush into Sylphy taking those glasses off, or Rudy not having time to improve on himself prior to this moment occurring. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the last episode of this core, and then of course we have to wait for core 2. So let me know what you thought down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course ring that bell, and as I mentioned, we do have a full live reaction over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're there, you'll also get a video shout out like Alexander Oknov, One Up Annie, Out of Ideas, Paul Tar, Paolo Grezok, and Philip Reinhardt are getting today, so I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.